Next question. Okay. In Korea, when we choose the university, the higher ranked universities are our priority, rather than the degrees they want to study. Can you please give some advice about the choice between university ranking and degrees?
I think I can add to some of the comments that have been raised so far, that I would encourage people to think about what you're interested in and where your strengths are, and particularly where your interests and strengths align, and then look at the courses that are on offer in these different universities, because it does have to be a match with the university and the course. There are lots of similarities across the different syllabuses in different universities, but there are also some key differences. And so maybe for me, a psychology degree in one place could be very, very different to a psychology degree in another university. So just choosing on the basis of the university might mean you're not really getting the rich experience that aligns with how you want to learn and what you want to study.
Yeah, so just to add to that a little bit, I think while university rankings should play some role in choosing a university, they're by no means the be-all and end-all of where you should submit your application. And I would say that it's important to actually look at the subject-specific rankings as well, because these are often a good indicator as to how good a particular university is for a given subject. So let's say you want to study, biology. Don't just look at the overall university rankings and, submit your application to the top 5 universities you see there, but have a look at which universities are ranked top for biology, for example, because sometimes this will change a little bit subject by subject. And ultimately, it's also important to, think about the overall university experience that you will have at any particular place. For instance, if you choose to study somewhere like London, which is quite busy and quite bustling, that might be a very different experience in terms of how you commute to your lectures, how you do your studies, where and how you get taught, compared to somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge, which are slightly more smaller towns and slightly more smaller places, where you might be offered a sort of more intimate experience in your education, and a little bit, in some ways a little bit more relaxed in terms of travel time and things like that. So to summarize, university rankings are important, but do think a little bit about, how they stack up when picking the particular subject that you're interested in, and that should be the primary, the primary thing that you look at, because ultimately you're going to be doing this subject for a number of years, at the very least 3. So make sure it's something that you enjoy and you think you'll get a good experience out of.
So just to share with you some of the things that we do in our school, all our students are encouraged to apply to top universities, regardless. So unlike in some schools, only the top 1% of the cohort are encouraged to apply, because Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, G5 universities do want the best students. So generally speaking, only the top 1% normally are encouraged to apply. But at my school, we encourage everybody, because we want them to get on this aspirational learning journey. As I mentioned earlier on, we feel that students gain so much more out of this journey, regardless of the outcome. It doesn't matter so much if they get into Oxford or Cambridge, but what matters is they become better students, they amass more knowledge, they build mental resilience, they've gained so much from this experience by doing work experience, voluntary work, going clubs and societies. They gain so much more than just that offer to university. So UCAS application, UCAS is the body that students apply to, the central body. In US, you call it Common App. In UK, it's called UCAS. So UCAS, we have 5 options to UCAS for non-medical courses. Medicine, dentistry, veterinary, you have 4 choices. 4 choices. For non-medicine, you have 5 choices. Medicine also, you do have 5 choices, but you can only apply to 4 medicine, dentistry, or veterinary. The 5th one, you can apply something else. But because you only have 1 personal statement, you normally would apply to the same degree type. So for example, You apply for 4 medicine, the 5th one you can apply for biomedical sciences. And then for non-medicine, you can apply to all 5 to computer science or psychology or engineering and so on. So I think the question about ranking and course, first of all, I think you need to identify what course are you applying for. Are you applying for a vocational degree or are you applying for an academic curiosity degree? And please, for parents, the message is do not be afraid of academic curiosity degrees, because they're equally as valuable as vocational degrees. So vocational degrees are things like medicine, because you know you're going to be a doctor, engineering, because you know you're going to be an engineer. But academic curiosity will be something like history, or it could be mathematics degree. Now, I know some people might think, okay, what do I gain out of a mathematics degree? Well, actually, it opens so much more doors than just, you know, so you just don't have that fear of applying for academic curiosity degrees. Once you have chosen what type, you know, whether it's vocational, whether it's academic curiosity, then you have to think about, okay, like university choices. And I appreciate that for international students, they also have to think about what happens when you get back home, you know, right? So if I went to university which was ranked quite low in the ranking table and I went back to Malaysia, I may not be able to get a job. I understand the pressures, the societal pressure. So I think the way I would advise my students is that when it comes to medicine, you have 33 medical school. I've never heard of an unemployed doctor. If somebody has, then let me know. So it really doesn't matter which medical school you go to. As long as you become a doctor, I don't think it matters whether you go to Oxford, Cambridge, because Oxford, Cambridge is very traditional in its teaching when it comes to medicine. They don't have many patient contact. Compared to other universities, there's more patient contact. So that's for medicine. But for the non-medical courses, you have 5 options. So you could apply to top 3 as your, you know, as your like top universities, and then the other 2 you could just choose based on location, based on, you know, based on subject ranking, for example. So that hopefully fits in your societal expectation, your parental expectation, but also for the children to be able to choose. So hopefully that solves both parents and children's sort of debate around which university you're, because you do have 5 options. You can try for 3, top 3, and then the other 2 you can choose for something based on subject ranking. As Andrew said, there's subject ranking as well. You take computer science, sometimes Imperial ranks better than Oxford. Sorry, I'm pitting them against each other. But, you know, and you have medicine, for example, the number 1 ranked for medicine is Dundee. It's not Oxford and Cambridge, it's Dundee, you know. So sometimes you do look at subject ranking, but I also appreciate that there is a societal expectation for you when you return back to your home country, when you're applying for jobs and everything, then going to a good university is important to you. But I think you can strategize it so that you have 5 options, apply top 3, and if you aim for Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, if you don't get into these universities, you would still end up, because you have worked towards these universities, you would still end up with a very good university. So you aim for the clouds and you reach hopefully to the stars, which is equally very good. Well, whichever way, the other way around.
As Yasmin said, it makes a great deal of difference. If you're, if you're going to do an upper degree, like you want to do a master's and a PhD degree, when you come to workplace or applying to universities for jobs, if that's at a top university, it's very important. It isn't as important where you went to an undergraduate degree at that point. But if you're going to go straight into business or industry, banking, finance, it makes a lot of difference which school you go to then. You might want to have the top university on your pedigree and your CV, because everybody will take a second look at Harvard or Cambridge or Imperial or Oxford. But in the United States, again, in particular, it doesn't matter whether you go to any state university. If you can get into graduate school, and the way you get into graduate school is by having a real interest in your topic, top grades, that sort of thing. And sometimes it's really easy to get top grades at a lesser university because it's less competitive. with students, and also they'd like people to shift. There's University of Washington, where I'm from, does not like people to do 3 degrees at one university. They want you to come from the UK or another university in the United States from your bachelor's to your master's. In looking at the difference between departments and top universities, you know, it's hard for me to say you don't have to look at a top university, but I would look at the top universities obviously first, and then find departments, and they're vastly different at different universities. The one at Imperial College, if you want to study environmental biology, you're probably not going to get as much in that as you would in molecular biology. It's very technical oriented, so it's science, technology, engineering, and medicine are the focus, but there's no humanities, for instance, so it's very much on the science front. But within those groups, you can find just as good of departments at many other universities, like Yasmin said at Dundee with medicine. Imperial College has 13 hospitals. They're the 13 major primary hospitals that you train at in London, for instance, but still it's not the top rated in medicine.
That is why we said earlier on, it's actually most students do undergraduate in the UK and then they do graduate in the US, because that strategy actually works out really well. You do undergraduate in the UK, you go to a good university in the UK, and the transition to a top graduate school in the US is actually much easier than the other way around. So actually that strategy also works. And just on the point that Alison made about psychology, a very good example, psychology, for example, looking at the course options and seeing different types, because even with the course, once you chose a course, there are differences in terms of what they offer at each university. Oxford, for example, does experimental psychology. Cambridge does psychological and behavioral science, neuroscience. Behavioral science, psychological and behavioral science, whereas Oxford does experimental psychology. Experimental psychology is different. UCL offers psychological and behavioral science. So again, it's like making sure that you really do your research about the course is very important, and doing it early on so that you have a good strategy of which route you're going for.
지금 굉장히 깊은 얘기를 좀 해줬던 것 같아요. 어쩌면 이 질문 내용이 어쩌면 우리가 답을 알고 하는 질문일 수도 있거든요. 근데 전공에 대해서 얼마나 포커스를 맞춰야 되는지, 얼마나 내가 깊이 알아야 되는지, 왜 이 포커스를 맞추지 않으면 사실 아까 얘기했던 것처럼 같은 심리학을 공부하는데도 학교마다 너무 달라가지고 이렇게 되는 경우가 있거든요. 그리고 아까 톱 학교에서는 그죠, 원투원 수업을 많이 한다고 했잖아요. 그 학교에서 그걸 수업을 하는데 내가 리서치를 하고 나의 리플렉션을 그저 얘기해 줘야 되는 거죠. 외워서 얘기하는 게 아니라 이런 상황인데 이 전공을 제대로 모르고 그저 그걸 공부한다? 이게 그저 있을 수가 없거든요. 그리고 지금 얘기했던 학교 중에 던디 뭐 이런 얘기도 했지만 러셀 그룹이라고 있거든요. 사실 우리는 옥스퍼드, 캠브리지, 임페리얼 여기 정도만 좀 익숙하지만 나머지는 익숙하지 않거든요. 하지만 굉장히 좀 좋은 학교들이 러셀 그룹이라는 이름으로 있고요. 그래서 뭐 들어보시면 맨체스터, 셰필드, UCL 뭐 여러 학교들이 다 있거든요. 그래서 이 학교들은 리서치를 또 공유하기도 해요. 그러니까 굉장히 좀 리서치가 있다라고 하면 박사를 과정을 간다든지 하는 데는 전혀 문제 없지만 사실은 우리가 비즈니스 환경에서 취업을 한다라고 하면 이 사람을 딱 알아보기에는 그런 걸 좀 회사에서 잘 모르잖아요. 그러니까 높은 랭킹의 학교가 되게 좋다. 왜 이렇게 될 수는 있을 것 같아요. 근데 최근에 보면 저희 학생들을 그저 헤드헌팅을 하고 그다음에 그 해보면 또 석사 레벨을 많이 하거든요. 그러면 리서치가 뭔지 어떤 분야를 전문성을 가지고 있는지 이런 질문까지 이어지거든요. 그러니까 뭐 학력이 좀 필요하다라고 하면 영국에 가서 그죠? 뭐 미국으로 이렇게 가실 수도 있고요. 아니면 영국에서 더 높은 학교로 가는 것은 내 대학교 성적에 따라서 러셀 그룹 정도만 간다라고 하면 그렇게 문제 없는 경우가 꽤 많거든요. 그래서 실제로 그런 걸 되게 많이 보아오고요. 아시죠? 그래요. next question. Okay.